This reading is titled, The Dark Night of the Soul. The days immediately following my trip to the emergency room were filled with anxiety, terror, and uncertainty. I suddenly had a huge ball of burning anxiety in my stomach that was wreaking havoc on my life. To complicate matters further, my mental acuity had plummeted. I was no longer able to process my thoughts as fluidly, which only increased my anxiety. I remember most days it being a struggle to keep food down, and most nights sleep not coming. I tried to continue earning money at poker, but it became clear that such an intellectually exhausting game was no longer a viable option given my current mental state. I was at a loss and was so drained from dealing with the fallout of my hospital trip. My body and mind felt in complete disrepair. In a desperate measure, I started taking a benzodiazepine or anti-anxiety pill by the name of Klonopin. Initially, the Klonopin provided a little relief, but it became crystal clear that given my low functioning state, that moving home would provide me the space in which I could begin healing. I came home to my very confused family in Midland, Texas. No one was sure what to make of my situation, the least of all myself. Surprisingly, it wasn't until I moved home that things began to get really dark. Once at home, my condition worsened, and I felt justified in keeping on my Klonopin regimen. I was having panic attacks nearly every other day, and leaving my bed was a major accomplishment. Eating was very challenging, and what little sleep I did get was during the middle of the day. Oftentimes, when my caring and very concerned sister, who also lived in Midland, would come over with my nephew, I didn't have the energy or stability to even leave my room. I would hear my nephew knock at the door, and then my sister tell him that his uncle wasn't feeling good, and he needed to be left alone. What hell realm had I entered into, I wondered. What had I done to deserve this? Were questions I was always asking myself. It didn't even feel real. It was so dark. I was staying up all night with severe anxiety and depression as my constant companion. I was in tears every day, screaming to my parents that I wanted out, that I wanted so badly to kill myself. I remember telling them if there was just a button I could push to end this all, I would have done it 1,000,000 times by now. It's all very heartbreaking, but it's all true. Thankfully, I've been blessed with patient and caring parents who were there every step of the way with me. I wasn't drinking or smoking pot because intuitively I knew that they wouldn't help my situation. But I was smoking upwards of half a pack of cigarettes a day. I had never been much of a cigarette smoker prior to this event. I tried a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I will just leave it as Midland, Texas is a difficult place to find help. Actually, the more honest truth is that I was beyond help at this point, and the suffering I was going through was just something that I would have to endure one way or another. I remember feeling 10 levels below what I thought somebody suicidal might feel. Suicidal thoughts and fantasies were also my constant companion at this point. When I forced myself to walk around my parents' neighborhood from time to time, I just remember how depersonalized I was and how I felt like there was just this wall up between me and the rest of the world, and how I was just disconnected from everything. Several times I would barely get to the end of my parents' street, and then everything would start spinning and I would get very weak and have to turn around. I would come home and collapse into tears in my room and promise myself to make it through one more moment. So many times during this period I was moment to moment. I felt utterly trapped in some torturous hell realm, and I had no feelings that I would ever lift. When my sister from Seattle, that I hadn't met until we were both adults, came to visit, I was possibly at my lowest point. I could sense how unsettled my condition was making her feel. She was trying to give me loving advice, but I just wasn't able to explain how helpless I was feeling. One day when she was visiting, I was starting to get tired and I actually felt like I could get some sleep. I decided to take half a Klonopin, That way I would hopefully stay asleep for a longer period of time. I crunched it up so it would go into my system faster and placed it under my tongue. 15 minutes after taking it, my heart started going into crazy palpitations. I was tossing and churning and waking up every 10 minutes, soaked in my own sweat for the next 12 hours. The harrowing experience didn't conclude after I woke up. I realized that I could no longer take Klonopin as the side effects were becoming much worse than what it was intended to treat. Quitting the Klonopin was a near impossible task at this point. I would lay in bed shaking as my mom would supplement me with a few ounces of a smoothie here and there. When I started to feel like I was going to start having a seizure, we decided to check me into a drug detox center called the Springboard Center in Midland, Texas. I am getting uncomfortable flashbacks just writing this. I slept for the better part of 4 days and was released. While I was there, a very empathetic Native American man, who was a nurse at the facility, asked me if I wanted to go on a walk with him one morning. During the walk, he really listened to me. Like myself, he was at a loss as to what was happening to me. I just remember one exchange that gave me hope when I was commenting on all the biological consequences of what had happened to me in Las Vegas, the serotonin syndrome, how I couldn't be healed. And I just remember that he responded to me, "At the same time, the brain is a speck of dust that we don't know anything about." Once home, I was bedridden for another couple of days. After about the third day, I slowly started to feel more human. It was a miracle. I could go to the grocery store and apply for jobs and hit the driving range with my dad. Maybe the cloud was starting to lift. For about a solid week, it seemed like I was making a recovery. And then, out of nowhere, the dreaded cloud reemerged. I was unable to get out of bed on Thanksgiving Day to join my family. I came out of my room that evening and laid on the living room floor and cried to my parents. I kept telling them that I'm not doing so well. I can't even leave my room anymore. They were supportive as always and kept encouraging me. It was at this point that I began reading about binaural beats and how instrumental they could be in healing depression and anxiety due to how effectively they reprogram your brain waves and your subconscious mind. I went to Best Buy and purchased a nice set of stereo headphones to increase the potentiality of the sound of the tones. What happened next was beyond my capacity of belief and began the complete restructuring of my entire being. My intention in reading these blogs is to give those who will find connecting with my story and my content helpful another option and opportunity to find me. If you would like to support this intention, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can like and share this video, and you can also sign up to be on my email list on my website at kundalinidiaries.com.